IG seems very skeptical of her account, though, and sources saying that the report will criticize both the tarmac meeting and its aftermath. Now, this whole miscarriage of justice has always stunk to high heaven to me, and now an objective authority is reportedly bringing the truth to light. So let's examine what all of this means, what we're learning, with former Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg, Democratic strategist Scott Bolden, and as former chair of that committee that had oversight over the DOJ's Inspector General, Jason Chaffetz. They should all know whether these sources leaking of the report are actually reliable. Gentlemen, you all made the all-star description, by the way, at the top of the show. We're all all-stars tonight.
Whether it's merited or not.
Exactly, why not? All right, Chaffetz, I got to go to you because this is wild now. I mean, first of all, I have to ask you, why this leak, this particular piece of information, and why now?
I remember the Inspector General, Mr. Horowitz, telling me a long time ago, he said at the end of the process when the report is written, I have to give it to the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and the FBI Director. Cooperating witnesses will get to see small sections, and when that happens, you're going to start to see leaks. It's inevitable, but only he has seen the final report and obviously his staff. It means it's on the verge of happening. It's been 18 months in the making, and I don't think at the end of the day it's going to come out and say they did a really good job. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Scott.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen either. The Democrats are going to be watching this as well, and lawyers as well, because what he did, what Comey did with the FBI, what Lynch did before that set this up, handcuffed the FBI and DOJ. So we're looking to see that too. The question, though, is that's in one bucket. Comey's legitimacy or his truthfulness in regard to his book and his interactions with Donald Trump are in a completely different bucket. But Comey puts Republicans and Democrats in very difficult positions based on what the issue is concerning Comey.
Why do you think Comey didn't tell Loretta Lynch about this July, very unusual, to say the least, a press conference about not indicting?
It was incredible. Let me tell you something. There's not one criminal prosecutor at the federal level that works at the FBI. They work at DOJ. He had to consult with DOJ. And with Lynch, why didn't she just recuse herself and let the deputy AG handle it? Because they could have kept control of it. There would be no need for Comey to become not only investigator, but prosecutor as well. That's a bad mix. Conflicts, what have you. But more importantly, we're here because of how he interpreted Loretta Lynch saying, I'm going to accept the FBI's recommendation. And then the FBI took it and ran beyond that. No consultation with DOJ, and that's just fundamentally wrong.
Saul Weisenberg, your reaction to this leak that he was insubordinate. I mean, maybe you've heard this word used to describe a high-ranking government official before, other than someone in the military. You don't really usually hear insubordinate. I mean, I was insubordinate. That's why I was a high school student. But, I mean, insubordinate? What is that? Defying protocol, et cetera? Is this just disciplinary, or is this serious?
It's very serious. Insubordination is not a strong enough word. You asked the question, why didn't he go to Loretta Lynch? Or Scott asked the question. He makes it very clear in his book. He thought the Department of Justice was corrupted, and he thought that it would hurt the FBI. He thought their investigation, in some sense, was corrupt for 4 or 5 reasons that he mentions. And he says, I didn't want the FBI to be tainted or corrupted by that. I wanted people to know that the FBI had done an investigation and made its own decision about that. It was a horrendous thing for him to do. It violated every protocol on the face of the earth. It wasn't his job, but that's why he did it. He said President Obama's comments about Hillary Clinton's guilt or innocence were highly inappropriate. He said that Loretta Lynch, it was inappropriate for her to direct him to call it a matter and not an investigation. He thought it was inappropriate that the Department of Justice attorneys were not insisting on getting the emails from Clinton's attorneys. And he actually had to go to Sally Yates and say, I'm going to call for the appointment of a special counsel if my agents don't get these emails, and they got them a day or two later. So he laid out a number of reasons why he did it, but it still doesn't excuse why he did it. Here's the biggest thing he did that is inexcusable. Here's the biggest, most inexcusable thing that he did. He presided over a an incompetent and corrupt investigation of Mrs. Clinton and did nothing about it. Here's a man that didn't hesitate to call for the appointment of a special counsel when he served in a Republican administration. Here, in a case that screamed out for a special counsel, he sat silent.
I want to go to Jason here. Jason, from the struck page texts that are trickling out, there's an interesting one, and it's from, I think, July 5th of 2016, and it involves you, Jason. Struck says, God, Comey is so good. This is after his testimony on Capitol Hill before your committee. Page, I know, brilliant public speaker and brilliant distillation of facts. Struck, yep, Chaffetz is in over his head. Page, I was about to say the same thing, and Chaffetz is trying to be so measured, but it's so phony. Now, talk about utter disdain for the other branch of government that is supposed to be exercising its own constitutional oversight, which is why we have the separation of powers, why our framers set up our government as it did. And, you know, the lovebirds, I guess, never thought anyone would see those particular texts. Jason.
No, look, the deep state never likes exposure. They don't like to be held accountable. They don't like somebody asking tough questions. What goes on in those texts, though, is, I believe, a conspiracy to actually withhold documents from Congress. Remember, I issued a subpoena for those materials, a duly issued subpoena, and they were talking back and forth about how they're just not going to provide them. And you can't do that. When you are conspiring, working together, remember, not only are they lovers, but they both work for the FBI, and they're discussing how they're going to withhold documents from Congress, a battle that we're still fighting this day. And I think if a judge or jury saw that, you would be very crystal clear that the only reason they're holding them back is because they didn't like Jason Chaffetz and Trey Gowdy and other people asking them hard questions.
Hold on. We got to get to the McCabe issue, because obviously now he's requesting immunity for his testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. We have a clip from Special Report. Everybody watch.
Did you know that Andrew McCabe, your deputy, had sat on that revelation about the emails?
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that to be the case. I do know that New York and FBI headquarters became aware that there may be some connection between Weiner's laptop and the Clinton investigation weeks before it was brought to me for decision. And as I write in the book, I don't know whether they could have moved faster and why the delay.
Scott.
Yeah, the fact that the documents were delayed, that's a real problem. But what the real issue is, was it necessary for him in October of 2016 to announce or to write essentially a public document as to whether they were going to open up the investigation or not? If they had the documents that long, if they were copies, that's a pretty efficient review. And I got to tell you, diligence and other mechanisms, you can go through some documents pretty quick to see whether they're copies or not. We do it in litigation all the time. I'm not so sure he had to announce that publicly to protect himself or the FBI. He could have gone through that. And remember, we're talking about a month before the election, which DOJ guidelines say you're not supposed to do anything that could influence an election. And he knew when he wrote that letter there was going to be some influence, despite the fact that he pulled it back or he said that there were just copies later.
Saul, we talked about this on radio, but it's not surprising at all, is it, that McCabe wants immunity? He wants use immunity for any further testimony on Capitol Hill. The guy's under criminal investigation. That's what any good lawyer would ask for, immunity.
Absolutely, Laura. People in hell want ice water. He's not going to get immunity unless somebody in the Congress is incredibly incompetent. If he gets congressional immunity, it will put in grave doubt any future prosecution of him. So that would be a real dereliction of duty. When Congress gave immunity to Poindexter and North, their convictions were overturned. It becomes extremely difficult because of the criminal procedure rules that you're familiar with to successfully prosecute anyone who gets immunized and then goes and testifies in front of Congress.
Jason,
I don't know that I agree with that. I think I think they need to actually hear what he's going to testify about. And remember, the government is already, the Inspector General is already recommending prosecution for McCabe lying previously. But I think Grassley is doing it the right way. Let's hear what he thinks he's going to actually say and not do what the FBI and the Department of Justice did, and that is hand out immunity Remember, they gave out 5 sets of immunity and got nothing for it during the Clinton investigation. I think Grassley should hear him out and toy with him a little bit, play with him a little bit, and see what he has to say.
One more thing, guys. Hold on. I want to play something for you before we go. April of this year, we have Comey on with Stephanopoulos, and he's asked specifically about the chain of command and sending that letter right before the election. It's a full screen. I'm sorry. Here's the full screen. He says, in an interview, Stephanopoulos, he was asked, if Attorney General Lynch had ordered you not to send the letter, would you have sent it? Comey says, no. I believe in the chain of command. I'm sorry. I think, given what we found out and given what the IG said, any 3 gentlemen want to respond to that? He believes in the chain of command.
It's moot at this point, if you ask me, because we know he sent the letter and he didn't ask, and he should have let DOJ handle it.
No, but he didn't believe the chain of command in July of 2016 either. I mean, he didn't believe in that. I mean, I think
it was issue-driven.
Yeah.
Depending on the issue, he believed in chain of command.
Yeah. Whether it was good for him, he believed in chain of command. Everybody, fantastic panel, as always, and you're always all-stars in my heart. Hey, everybody, do you remember this one?
I think he's morally unfit to be president.
Well, up next, Tom Fitton, Dan Bongino on Comey's own moral fitness after what we learned today. Don't go away.